Right, welcome back, guys. So I'm recording this from my office on campus, so it might sound a little bit different. Some people might be coming in and out, so there might be some pauses to the video. But I'm just going to go through how I would create this horse hoof. It's interesting because there's different types of, well, it's not different types, but there's sort of variations with the horse hoof, right? There's the uni sort of toe, which is like what horses have, where it's just one sort of big toe. And then there's like cows and other animals where there's two, so it's like split down the middle. So I'm going to go for this one here. I think it's going to be more or less the same approach. So I don't think I've really made one of these properly before. So that'll be interesting to see how I go about it. But just looking at this shape, I think it'll probably be best to start from this part here. So maybe just like the toe, the wall and the heels, and just get that all in one hit. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We can go to subtools and then let's append another shape here. And this is getting in the way, so I'm just going to move that over. So probably a cylinder might work quite well here. And this one here, so I might move that to the side there. And I'll delete this original sphere. So we're just left with this cylinder. Now I can reshape this just by scaling that down. Just seeing how I go here. So there's a few extra settings in the move gizmo. Just by going to this little cog, and we're presented with a bunch of different sort of modifiers. So we might be able to use some of these. I haven't used these all too much, but I'm sure we can work it out. So taper sounds like what I want. So you got to grab these little cones, and that will allow you to sort of move things around. Right? This here allows you to see, so if you hover over them, it shows you what they do. Right? So I sort of want it tapered like this in a way. I think what this will do is not have this sort of curve here and have it more linear. Yep. So perhaps something like this. You can sort of see it's pushed forward. So we can do something like that. And then afterwards we can push that forward. So just looking at the wireframes, it's quite a lot here. So I'm going to go back into the cog and then accept that change. So we don't need any of these vertical, horizontal lines. And let's see if we can do anything about that. So I think I've gone a bit too far, but when you first create the primitive, there is usually an option here where you can adjust some things. So let's just append. I just want to test this out. I don't do this often, but sometimes there's a thing here in initialize. You can sort of reduce the resolution count. So probably not what I'm looking for. So let's just delete that one. And let's just start off with this. So we don't need any of these horizontal lines here just yet. So to get rid of them, what you can do is use the Z modeler. So that's BZM. And Z modeler is basically ZBrush's way of allowing you to do some more traditional style modeling. Now it's a very weird tool, but and it takes some time getting used to, and I'm still not very used to it. Basically, you hover over a certain interest point, like let's say here, this edge, press spacebar, and then you can apply certain actions to that selection. So I want to delete or remove. So just got to find the right one. So delete the full edge loop. So if I click on that now, it will remove that edge loop for me. So I can get rid of all of that. And then if I go back to my move tool, what I can do is mask the top area, and that will leave the bottom free to move around. It might not look like it because it's so low poly, but it is. We just have this top part masked off. Now then I can move this forward a little bit, like what we see here in the reference image. So something like that, and it sort of comes down like this. So I wonder if we're able to maybe use one of these deformers to help. So let's see. Let's open up this cog. It's a bit hard to press sometimes. And let's grab maybe I don't know if taper will work, but let's try the deformer. And then over here, we should be able to reduce the number of segments. So it will be the Y, maybe the Z, so this little white handle here. Can. Maybe not. That's okay. So I think there's enough for us to work with here. So we can grab these guys and maybe move them around. So let's grab this one. Let's actually restart that. So I messed it up a bit. So let's full reset. Let's unhide anything if we've selected it by accident. Okay, so that's kind of like what I was looking for. Right, so let's see if we can adjust this so we can get exactly what the number of joints that we're looking for, the number of segments. There we go. And we don't need that much, so it's this little orange one here. So now what we can do is pull these guys down. So we should be able to grab these individually like this and then pull them down. Let's try that again. Let's make sure we don't have mask turned on. Let's try that again. Let's select these guys and then we can move them down like that. Okay, so that's what I was looking for. So I think something like that works pretty well. Might move this up a little bit and maybe over slightly. So we can go back to this cog and then press accept. So I think that will be a pretty good starting point for us. One thing I didn't get in these reference images is like the bottom part and how that sort of looks from the bottom. So I might just pause the video and then quickly find a reference for that. All right, so I'm back and this is the reference I'm sort of looking at. So I wanted to see what the bottom of the shoe sort of looked like. I'm more looking at the shape. So I want to get that right first. And it's not so much of a straight circle. It's more of a rounded top. It's a bit pointy towards the tip. It's a bit wider in the middle and it's more or less straighter down the bottom. So we can sort of get that shape just by using the move brush. So BMV. And I'm going to press X to turn symmetry on. And then let's get this shape more or less like what we see. Okay, something like that. And then we'll fix up the top. So pull some of these guys back. So it looks like it's sort of cutting under. And we can try to straighten these lines out as well. It's okay if it's not perfect because I think that adds a little bit more believability to the shape anyways if it's not perfect. Okay, so that's pretty good, I think. So let's block in the sort of part at the top here. Right. And then let's get in the rest of the leg. So I think it's looking a little small, so I might just scale that up a little bit and over like that. Okay, so I'm going to start off with maybe a sphere, and I'm just going to plonk that in. Where did we go? So we've got that. I'm in solo, sorry. So I turn that off, and then let's get this sphere in. So I'm just going to squish that down and sort of rotate that into place, scale that up as well, and scale it sideways to sort of fit. Something like that anyways. And then there's a muscle or joint up here. So I'm going to just grab a cylinder for that. So let's go to append. Then let's append a cylinder. Let's pop that in there. Something like that. Let's scale that down a little bit, scale it up. Maybe a little bit more. Then let's append another sphere in that area. And I'm pressing Alt and clicking on these subtools to activate them. Okay. So I think that will give us a pretty good starting point. So let's merge these guys together. And I think maybe for now we keep the horse hoof here separate from this joint. So what I'm going to do is just hide this one, the horse hoof, and I'm just going to move that up a little bit so it's not sort of coming through the other side. Now selecting this top one in the list, I can scroll down to where it says merge and then merge down. So just press OK to that. So when we're merging, it's more like grouping it together. We're not actually merging it. So you can see that they're still separate. So we need to Dynamesh this together. So I'm just going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh. So over here, and then just give that a Dynamesh, and that will fuse it together. And then just run a ZRemesher at half to lower the poly count and to clean up that topology as well, because it's quite messy. And I think that will give us a pretty good starting point to work with. Okay, so reduce that again. Okay, I'm going to turn adaptive off, then try that again. So I want it fairly low, just so I can work with the shape a bit more, and then increase the resolution as I sort of need it. So something like that looks pretty good, right? So let's bring back our horse hoof as well. So we do need to run a Z-remesher on this, because right now the default topology on the cylinder is quite messy. So we have this sort of shape here where all the lines are coming to one point, and that's something we definitely want to avoid. So let's go to geometry, and then let's just have adaptive, keep it about the same, and then Z-remesh. Great. So that looks pretty good. So in this process, we can just use the move brush and then just move things around until we get the shape that we're sort of looking for. Make sure you have symmetry turned on. So I didn't have it turned on before, so I might Control Z all the way back. So have symmetry turned on, which is X on the keyboard. And then I'm going to sort of move some of these things around to get the look I'm going for. Okay. And obviously we have like fur or hair, or whatever you want to call it, sort of in the way. So we've got to keep that in mind as well, that when we add this fur, if we're going to do that, it's going to add a little bit more thickness to the shape. So we kind of just want to get a nice, we want to compensate for that. Okay, so down here, these almost look like it sort of sits over the top like that. So that's the back side here, the heel. You can see it sort of comes over like this. Great, so I'm not going to worry too much about the underside because I don't think we're going to see it. But if you are planning on showing the underside, then you definitely want to pay a bit more attention to how that looks. Okay, so that looks pretty decent. So let's subdivide. I think that looks pretty good. I might just shape the back side a little bit to this reference image. So you can sort of see it comes down a little bit like this. And the shape of the nail sort of reflects that as well. And it sort of comes up a little bit up here as well. It's quite a bit thinner up here. Okay, so it looks pretty good. So I think I'll make it a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is press W, press this button here, which affects all the subtools, and hold down Alt to reset the gizmo by pressing this button, and then just scale down a little bit. So it was just a bit too large, and I couldn't grab the whole hoof area here, or the whole joint, and just move that around. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So let's subdivide, and then down here for the nail itself, let's subdivide that maybe a couple more times, and then let's just continue shaping this to get the sort of results that we want. So it's looking a little thin, so what I might do is turn this off so I'm not affecting all the subtools, reset its position, and then just give it a little bit more thickness by scaling it like that, just moving that in place. Okay, so back to the move tool, and let's get this shape looking pretty good. You can see from these references that it's sort of a little bit, it's almost like a little bit wider than the nail itself. So something like that. Yeah, I've had a coffee. But I can come for a walk. Just doing some recording. No, that's all right. All right, I'm back. Let's see, where was I? Okay, so we're sort of just getting the shape of this thing. And I think it's pretty good as it is so far. You can sort of see that it dips a little bit over here, and you can sort of see it over here in this image as well. So we can get that in. I'm just going to use a clay build-up for this. Maybe a larger brush size. And then go on the outside just to get that effect to be more visible. Great. So let's see what else we can do. So I think maybe start working with the muscles here. Get that in. This looks pretty good already. Let's get some of this sort of muscle groups in. Shape this this leg out a little bit more. See that there's a sort of bone here, so we'll get that coming in, and we'll sculpt this sort of bone out like that. You can almost see that it's like coming up and around like this. We can even use a dam standard to sort of get this effect going a bit better like that. Okay, and then from the front it's a bit, let's see, you can use the move brush, move this in a little bit more, and these parts here we can sort of move down a bit. It's looking a little too thin, so we'll just move these guys out a bit using the move brush. Great. Right. So it looks like it goes up a little bit, maybe. It's kind of hard to tell with the references that I have, but I'm not too sure if that goes up because there's a slight little part that goes up in the actual hoof nail, or if this is like on the outside. But if it is on the inside, so it's part of it and not just part of the horseshoe, you can just do something like that. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. What we can do to give sort of effect on that sort of nail-like effect on the horse nail itself. It's just to subdivide, and then we can add a bit of texture to this. So let's subdivide here. Let's probably go up maybe, let's see, we're on 5. Let's just see how that looks with the clay buildup. All right, that looks pretty good. So with a large brush, we can just go sort of up and down the clay buildup. I mean, just because the clay buildup has this sort of rough edge to it, it gives off this desired effect pretty well, I think. We might need to press Alt a couple of times just to go in and out, just so it doesn't get too thick. Okay, Control D to subdivide again. And just with a lower intensity, and maybe increase the focal distance. You can get a more finer sort of look. Oops. Great, and there's some parts that sort of go across as well. So to get that, we might need to experiment a little bit. So let's see. Maybe a damp standard would work, or the clay build-up again. I'm thinking more the clay build-up might be a bit better. So just a couple of these strokes going across just to give it a more thicker layered effect, perhaps. And then over the top, just trying to hit one side of this clay build-up line that we made earlier, just to blend one side in a little bit more. Great, so that looks pretty good, I think. Let's see if we can use the surface tools, the noise maker, to add a little bit of extra detail to it. So in the tools panel, we can go to surface and then press noise. And then we can zoom in here and see if we can add a little bit more to this. So let's see if we can get more of a high res view. So that's not really good. So let's see. Maybe these ones might be fine. And we're looking for just something fine just to add a little bit more visual interest. The noise maker is cool because it's a noise maker, right? There's different plugins here as well. So plugins, just different sort of effects. So you can see a weaving effect, a wood effect might work. Maybe a wood effect might work. Let's see. So we go press OK, and then we can increase the plugin intensity here, right? And the scale, we can reduce that. So the noise scale, we can reduce that down. So that's the actual noise. I'll make that really big. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. We can rotate this just to see if we can. Maybe that might work. Let's going in the wrong direction though, so we need to rotate that the other way. Let's see. A little bit tricky to work with because it's procedural. It's trying to push it a particular direction. There we go. I think that's the one that we're looking for. So let's adjust this to see if we can get it looking the way that we sort of want it. Maybe something like that, and then we can scale this thing up. Because we don't need a lot of it. It's sort of out of position now. Okay, and then we can reduce the strength of this, make that a little bit more subtle. Then if we need to crunch any numbers, maybe, let's see, if we want more lines, maybe add another one there. That looks pretty good. Let's see if we can offset that in the Z value. Try and push it back a little bit. No. Okay, so that looks all right. Let's see if we can rotate that just a little bit more. I think that looks okay. Probably a bit too strong. Then we probably want a few more lines in there. The angle is quite tough to get right. It looks pretty good from here, but then from this side it's not too good. Okay, so let's press OK to that and see if that gives us anything nice to work with. It's okay. I don't know if I actually like it anymore. It's a bit too obvious, but let's just press apply to mesh because it will soften out a little bit. Okay, I don't mind it actually. Then if we go over the top of it with a clay build up again, just to knock back some of this detailing, blend that in a little bit more. Might give us the look that we're going for, maybe. Press smooth to smooth some areas out a bit. And go over the top of that. I like it again. We just need to spend a bit of time getting that to look right. Now, it's pretty sharp down the bottom, right? And I've got something pretty soft now. So what we could do is then use a dam standard, but in the opposite direction to create a more of a sharper edge like this. just going to freehand it because I think that might give a better, more natural result than to use something like the lazy mouse to get that in. Let's use the move brush as well to push these bottom pieces out a bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then for the underside, let's just quickly rough that out. So let's see. I'm not going to expect anyone to be looking at it, but let's just rough that out. Give it a bit of detail whilst we're here anyways. And then something like this. Let's just cut into here and sort of call that done. Just double check the back. So the back is, it sort of does come up. I think these guys must come up to about here. So let's just grab that. Let's just correct that part there a bit. And I'm making that assumption. And if you're going to do this properly, don't really want to make that assumption. Definitely check whether that's the case, that it does that. So this sort of bottom part here, where was it? This part here, does that sort of come up to this part? Reduce the focal length there. Okay. And if we wanted to make this a little bit more flatter, we can use the cutting brushes. So it's BC and it's these sort of clip brushes here. The one that we're looking for is this one here, I think. So it will replace the Control Shift button. We should be able to sort of clip this area, but if I hold down Alt, it's obviously not what I wanted. So Control Z. Let's see, maybe that does that, so it's not a clean brush. But there's another one which is the Knife React, right? That again will replace this Control Shift tool. Let's see, so it's got multiple subdivisions, so we can freeze this. Unfreeze by pressing that button again. Sort of projects back, but that's not very nice looking. All right, so let's see. Let's just delete lower, because I can't imagine why we would need to go back. And then flatten that out. So just sort of cut that area. And we can smooth that to sort of blend. I'm not expecting anyone to look under this anyways. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Let's just get some extra detail on this part here. So I'm going to subdivide this again. And maybe let's go a couple more times. just so we can get this detailing the way that we want it. So increase that intensity. I don't think there'll be much else to do here. It's looking pretty good. We just need to sort of clean this up a bit more. So looking at it from the front view, we just need to clean up these parts a bit. You can sort of see that it's a bit sort of messy. And a lot of this is going to be covered by fur anyways, but let's just say we're doing a furless creature. You probably want to spend a bit of time getting this to look and feel like it should. So we've got to sort of think about how this would sort of look with just maybe more like skin, right? So it'll probably be sort of going over the edges here a little bit. So we'll give a little bit of thickness down here, and then we can use the move brush to sort of tuck that in a bit nicer. One thing I like with the move brush is that if you reduce the intensity quite low, you can have this sort of sliding effect where you can sort of nudge things around quite nicely. So I almost want it to sort of seep over the edge maybe. Then we can use the standard brush, a smaller standard brush, just to go over the edges here and make that sort of feel like it's like about to burst over. Right. A little bit more growing, and then it's just going to fall over the edge. Okay. And then we can blend that in with a little bit of, larger sort of wrinkles with this damp standard. Think about how this might fold over or how that might look. Then clay build up just to finish it off, I think. So let's subdivide one more time. Hold down Alt to tidy that up a bit. Okay, so these lines here we can sort of try to smooth out. It's a fairly low polygon still, so we can smooth quite easily. And sort of want to come into here and try to get this detailing here to look a bit nicer. So just go over the top of it with a softer sort of lower intensity smooth brush. It's not smooth brush, sorry, damp standard. So just to get all these detailing to pop a little bit more. Great, and if we wanted to, we can go over this area with some smaller damp standards for like some more finer wrinkles that would sort of appear in this area like this. I'm being a bit loose with it because I don't want to be so rigid and methodic with, maybe not methodic, but more like structured. I want it to feel natural. Right, and in between these wrinkles, just go over the top of them with the, or in between them, sorry, not over the top of them, with the standard brush, and it will make it pop. It'll make it look a lot deeper than it actually is. Okay, and just to finish off this surface, it's not going to have fur on it, but we're going to create a more skinny, like a quick skin texture. We can go back to the surface noise maker, go to noise, and let's frame this up. So let's create something a little bit larger. It's going to have more rougher skin because it's an animal, it's down to the ground. The skin will be a bit rougher. And then let's just use this curve to adjust the shape of this. So probably just need 2, maybe 3, but I'm looking for something that has like maybe paws, but not too many. And I don't want to do this because it kind of starts to look a bit like concrete or some sort of rock. So I want it to be a bit rougher. Maybe something like that. Let's see if we can play around the scale. Okay, 6 might be a bit too much, so let's go 5. Let's press OK to that, just to see how that looks. And when you press apply to mesh, it's going to apply it to the mesh, it's going to bake it in. But because we don't have too high of a poly surface, it's going to blur out a bit, I think, anyways. So let's press apply to mesh. You can see it blurs it out, but it gives us a nice subtle sort of look, I think anyways. But before I do that, I want to try to mask off, because I don't want that effect to be in these areas here. I want it to be sort of varying in different areas, so in intensity. So if we go to masking, and then we can select by cavity, like this, or by AO. So it'll be more in this area. We can increase the mask. Where's increase? So grow mask, we can sort of grow that. I think I want to do cavity. And then blow that mask out like that. So quite a bit. That way when I apply, so maybe not that much actually. So let's sharpen that. Just Control Z it back a bit. Okay, something like that. So that way when I apply this, it's not going to apply that to that area as much as everywhere else. So there's some areas that's a little bit softer. And if you want to work on the skin a bit more, you can use a polish. So BP polish. And you want to use a fairly large brush and a low intensity. And sort of push some of these areas that are at the top in a little bit, right? So it's a very subtle effect, but it's a nice one. So you can sort of just come into here and soften some of these areas. And you want to do this to the peaks, not the concaved areas. So there's probably a lot more we could do here. A lot of more of those wrinkles would be nice. I think maybe I want the noise to be a bit more, so I might try that again. So apply to mesh again with that noise that we did. So it's going to apply that double the amount and then just go over with a polish. Just a larger polish just to break up the sameness of it all. Okay, so let's take a render. Let's go render best. And that's it. So I think that looks pretty good. There's definitely a lot more we could do, but as a quick little hoof that we just made, I think that will work. And it all depends on how close you're going to see this. Like, do we want the viewers to see it from here? Or is it more going to be like this big, right? And whether it's going to be covered in fur or not. These wrinkles here, though, are a bit too pushed in, or they're a bit too isolated. So they're only in these areas. I'll probably want to come back in and just put more of these wrinkles a little bit more around the area itself. So it's a bit too, there's only wrinkles in certain areas. I'll probably want that to be more around the whole thing. That way it would look more blended in rather than it's just over here. Okay, so let's blend that out. Great. So that's it for this one.